Okay, good evening, students. Today we are going to see about cross-site request forgery. So it is a type of forgery related to cross-site scripting. So now we are going to see in detail about the introduction about cross-site request forgery. So in this request forgery, cross-site request forgery, API endpoints are used to perform that operation, right? So normally API endpoints can be accessed only by the privileged access user, example like admin account, right? So what this cross-site request forgery is going to do, it is going to exploit the result in an admin or privileged account by performing an operation on behalf of that ethical user rather than it is a illegal user who is using that content of that ethical user, right? So, and this is implemented using JavaScript code snippet. Rather than using the JavaScript code snippet, we are trying to access the API, sending that we are the privileged users, privileged access use. So this CSRF attacks take advantage of a browser because there is a trust relationship between the website and browser. Using that trust relationship, we are using the content of that trust, and then they are breaking the rule and they are trying to access the privileged user account through this forgery. So how this forgery works? So CSRF attacks will go unnoticed by the user because they doesn't know that their account is affected by the CSRF. So this type of attack can be used to take advantage of privileged user and perform operations against a server without the knowledge of the privileged user. And this type of attack is also known as stealthy attack because we are stealing because that the hacker is stealing some content um, from the privileged user without their knowledge. So RF is implemented using hyperlink. So that is in hyperlink is created. In that hyperlink, the URL will be represented. In that URL, the value of the parameters, whatever we are passing, using that parameter information, they are trying to access the privileged user information. So if you see the example that is given here, so here if you see, there is a hyperlink that is created with HTTPS mysite.com and it is embedded in the HTML CSS. Taking that benefit of or out of taking that benefit of or out of it and then using that they are trying to access the privileged user content. So the same example is given here by representing the HTTP GET request. If you see here, get slash resource URL question mark key is equal to value. And then the protocol used here is HTTP and its version is 1.1. Again, we will consider the example of host www.megaband.com and once again, I insist that this content is taken from the Web Application Security textbook for Web Application Security page. So every HTTP GET request includes the HTTP method GET followed by a resource URL. That is what I have already told here. And then the query parameter. So where the query parameter will be available after the question mark, what we have represented in this page. So whatever represented after the question mark until white space will be taken as the query parameter. So server gets this request and appropriate handler is executed in the class for the corresponding query parameter that is passed in this HTTP GET method. Okay, so I think now it is clear what is cross-site request forgery and how we are implementing this query parameter tampering. So next we will move on to the next slide. So the next slide is of the representation of query parameter tampering. The flow of that query parameter tampering is given in this figure. So if you see this figure, first the user one creates the malicious link targeting a get endpoint, right? So already I told you this cross-site request forgery is implemented through the API, and one of the endpoint of the API is get request. So get request is having the least privilege of security. So using that advantage, this hacker is trying to access user one is the hacker who is creating the malicious link targeting that get endpoint. So next step, user one, so whatever malicious link he is created using the parameters that is passed through the malicious link, that will be spread through email or websites, right? So the link that is created with URL link is spread through other users through email or website. And if user 2 clicks the link, consider that user 2 is a privileged user and he is clicking that link, and HTTP GET request is made on behalf of user. But he is not aware of the particular URL is consisting of malicious, unaware of it, user 2 clicks on that particular link. Okay, so fourth step, an HTTP GET request is made on behalf of user 2, right? So who's not who's unauthorized to access the link of user 2, right? So the server possesses the HTTP GET with user 2 with the authentication cookie, yeah, right? So a session with cookie information is created inspect of user 2, it is created without his knowledge. So last step, server state is changed as if it is were changed by the user 2, although user 2 is not aware, right? So this is for the entire scenario, how it works. User 1 is the hacker and user 2 is the privileged user. Without his knowledge, his account has been hacked by user 1 through the link which is created as malicious. Right. Okay, now CSRF get a malicious link is spread that cause state changing HTTP GET request to perform on behalf of authenticated user. That is what we are seeing in the example also when it is played. Let's look at an example in order to make this concept more concrete. The first example is server-side routing class that is written on the top of express.js. So JS nothing but JavaScript, and which is the most popular Node.js based web server source. So we will see the JavaScript snippet that represents this particular example. So if you see here, app.get slash account. So the endpoint for this slash account, if the content is accessed through this endpoint, what is going to happen, right? So function, request, and response are the parameters that are passed to the function. If not request dot query, if the request dot query is not available, then it has to return the status code as 400, which is the error. Else, what it has to do, it has to represent the result in the JSON format, which is for the request dot query, right? So that is given in the line number 3, right? So first line, we are creating the endpoint, which is going to access function, which is going to access the function passed by request and response. And if request dot query is not available, then it has to generate an error code of 400. If it is available, then it has to return the JSON object as an output. Okay, so this is extremely simple route that will do only a few things. That is what I have explained just now. Right. So next we will, okay, now if you see the first example, here we are not passing any parameters, only the endpoint information is available. If you see the second code that is available here, so what it is going to represent, it is a constant XHR is equal to new XML HTTP request, and the parameter equal, we are creating an object to represent the parameter value as ID is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is assigned to param. and xhr dot on ready state change. If the state of the user, privileged user is changed, then it will call that function. That is what was already we have defined, which consists of two parameters, request and response, right? So console.log xsr.response text, right? So the previous one is without parameter, and then second example that is shown here is with a parameter, and its value is id is equal to 12345. Now in slash account, and after the question mark we are passing the parents, which is nothing but already we have defined as id is equal to 12345, and we are passing the value as true so that it will be open the connection for the user to in that if the link is clicked, and xsr.send. So if it is successful, that is if the query is available, the ID is available in the server, it will generate the JSON object for the corresponding value, and that JSON object is shown in this last line, right? So ID is represented in the JSON object representation of 12345, right? So next we will move on to the next page. Okay, so the two main identifiers of CSRF attacks are, so that is already we have discussed, the privilege escalation. So that is, we have already seen in the diagram also. User 1 is using the privilege of user 2. And then the second one is TC attack. So that is what already I have represented. The account is compromised without the knowledge of authenticated user. So now we will see other methods that are available in HTTP. So apart from get method, we are having other methods that are create, read, update, and delete, which is known as CURD in web application, right? So we can able to create a content, and we can able to read the content from the database. We can able to update the content of the database, and we can also delete a record from the database or one or more records from the database, right? So that is what CURD represents. So for a web application, it has to be implemented based on this CURD operation. And this HTTP works, the get is only of the form which is having least secure. That is also already I have mentioned in the starting of this lecture, right? So it is the easiest way for CSRF attack in using this get request in HTTP, right? Okay, now what we are going to do here, we are going to create a malicious link, and that is kept under the anchor tag, that is what represented as A, and then slash A, right? So closing HTML tags of anchor tags, that is what represented as, which is an anchor tag that is created. So so if you see the line A href is equal to https://www.mywebsite.com, and we are passing the parameter id is equal to 123 and my website, right? So it will create a link like structure, and we can give the link value will be my website, right? So the user doesn't know whatever is passed in the link, but he will try to click only my website link, because unknowingly that it will go to only the website of that user. But actually what it is doing, it is passing the parameter id is equal to 123 using this URL. So if the privileged user clicks that link, automatically it will be landed with the parameter id is equal to 123, and it will get the content based on it. A session will be created, and after that he can able to access the content who is not eligible to access the content, right? So the same thing is represented here, and it will send a query param to the associated server, and it will get the response for the same. So hyperlink pointing to this particular route could be easily crafted and sent to an authenticated user. Right? So that is what are represented here. and it involves HTTP GET param tampering. Usually proceed as follows. So these are the steps that is following using this hyperlink creation. So first, the hacker figures out the web server uses HTTP GET params to modify. So if the parameters are not supported for GET request of HTTP, then this will not work, right? So first he will identify whether it is allowing GET params to modify its flow of logs. Second, the hacker traps the URL string with those parameters using this hyperlink, right? Hyperlink EA, href, https, www.megaband.com, transfer to user. So this is the authorized account, right? So this is the hyperlink. So once the hyperlink is clicked by the authorized user, the amount will be transferred from that authorized user to the hacker. So for that, this particular link works. Next, what the hacker will do, he develops the distribution strategy, usually either targeted, who's having the highest chance of being logged in, having the correct amounts of funds, right? So some of the users will be logged in and they will be working in any other website during their session is live, right? So the hacker will use that particular time and he try to transfer the account from the user to from the authenticated user to the hacker account, right? Okay, next we will see the next slide of this lecture. So that's all about how we are passing query parameters and how this CSRF is implemented using query parameters. Next, we will see the alternate get payloads, right? So alternate get payloads, what are the different methods that are available for get payloads? We will see under this heading. So many HTML tags that accept the URL parameter will automatically make GET request when interact with or when loaded into the document object mode. As a result of this, GET requests are the easiest to attack via CSRF. In the previous example, we used a hyperlink tag in order to trick the user for executing a GET request in their own browser. Alternative ways are given here, right? So if you see the coding part here, an image source is created. Within the image source, the hacker is setting the account transfer information as parameters. Okay? So image source is equal to the URL. After question mark, whatever we are passing is acting as the parameter. To user equal to the hacker account content and the amount is equal to 10,000, right? So if the image is clicked by the authenticated user, automatically the amount will be transferred from the user account to the hacker account. So when image tags are detected in the browser will initiate a GET request to the source endpoint included in the image tag, and this is how the image objects are loaded into the image. The same thing is explained using in this figure. The first user one post an image that removes the HTTP GET on that image. And next step, an HTTP GET request is made on behalf of user 2. And the server processes the HTTP GET with the user 2 authentication cookie. Server state is changed as if it were changed by the user 2, although the user 2 is not aware of what happened because the amount is withdrawn from user 2 and it is deposited to hacker, right? So that is not aware of this is not aware of user. He is not aware of this particular information, so that it is represented like this. Okay, next we will see the next slide of this lecture. So likewise, similar to image tags, what we have used, we can also use video tag to make the user to be hacked by sending the parameters within that video tag information, right? So that example is given in the first coding part, video with width and height of the video is given in the first line. Second line, we are representing the source as the URL, and after question mark the hacker's account and then the amount is specified, And but for the user too, it will be like a video file, and if he clicks on that video file, automatically it will open a session to the bank account, and it will transfer the content from the user to hack. Right, so that's all about the two categories of CSRF we have been using get method, and within that get method using different tags. The first request get method uses uh, anchor tag, hyperlink, as well as it uses by passing parameters to the URL. Right, so next alternative get method representation uses image source as well as video source, right? Post endpoints. So what the CSRF attack takes place against get endpoint is much easier to distribute a CSRF via a hyperlink, image or other HTML tag that is initiated on an HTML get request or a manifest. Sorry. However, it is still possible to deliver a CSRF payload that targets the post, put, or delete endpoints, right? So, similar to get endpoint, we can also implement this, but it is complex compared to get endpoint because get endpoint is less secure compared to post or put or delete endpoint. So the delivery of post payload just requires a bit more work as well as some mandatory user interaction. In this form object, that particular request will be sent to another page to store it in the web server side. It as post. And here we are having two um, text field. So the if you see the first two text fields are hidden, that means it will not be visible to the user. Name is equal to user, value hacker, and then the next field is also hidden where the amount and the value is equal to 10,000. Right. So once the post endpoint is clicked, again this right. So that is what hidden by the text field is hidden. That information is given in this tag, first two tags. And next, last one is the submit button, where we are representing the value of the submit button as submit, and we are closing the form, right? So, CSRF via post form, we can make use of hidden type attribute on form inputs in order to see data that will not be rendered inside the browser, right? So, next slide, we will see the diagram for the representation. So user create a malicious web form using the form tag on their own website, and user one distribute this web from the form, then submit, and HTTP post request is made on behalf of user one to another server. The server process the HTTP post on behalf of user 2. Application state is changed even if one of the internal network only accessible to user, right? So the same representation is given here, and then the password and text and password of the user 2 is represented here, right? So the first two in the text field are hidden, that is for hacker, and the next two text field or one is for username and another is for password of user 2, which is the authenticated user. And the final one is the submit button, right? So this is the extension representation of the previous code where we have represented only hack details in the previous code of form tag. But here we are including the authenticated user information also. Using the password and the username of that user 2, the hacker will debit the amount from the user 2 account. So that is what given in this code. Okay, so once the user enters the detail in the login form and he fills out the content, advantages of user's current application state in the browser, which is active. The session is created and user 2 account is active. In this case, the user is signed into Megabank, and although they are interacting with their entire different website, because if the user has logged in, but he is interacting with a different website. So using that logged in information and the session detail, the hacker will steal the content of amount from the from the mega bank, right? So this technique can also be used to make requests on behalf of user who has access to internal network. So next we will see the last slide of this lecture. So if the user who is on internal, so this is mainly applicable. It is very different. As I said earlier, for using post request via anchor tag. But sometimes you must make an elevated request against the post endpoint, in which case forms are the easiest way of successfully making an attack. Okay, thank you everyone for attending this session, and this is for CSRF.